Hello everyone, I'm Thévenet. I'm a PhD student under the supervision of Nicolas Mathevon from the NS lab in Saint-Étienne and Nicolas Grimault from the CAP team in Lyon. I'm working on sound perception in crocodiles, and today I'm going to speak about information coding in crocodiles vocalizations. So first, you may wonder why study acoustic communication in crocodilians. Because first, we know very little about it, and secondly, because crocodilians are very vocal, with a true repertoire of calls that is especially essential in the early stages of crocodiles' life. So for example, from the eggs, crocodiles synchronize their ching with vocalization, soliciting at the same time the opening of the nest by the mother. And then juveniles can emit two types of calls, so distress calls emitted in the presence of danger, calling for adult protection, or contact calls, allowing the grouping and cohesion of juveniles within nursery. But how do these young crocodiles deal with the massive auditory information present in their noisy environment? And for example, how do they manage to extract the sound of their own species, which are biologically relevant signals, from the sound produced by other present animals? So let's take a simple example. In this situation, young caimans have to extract the calls of the fellow caimans, which sounds like that, and frog calls emitted at the same time, which sounds like that. So we finally have quite this situation. And we wonder, how do the caimans decide to which call they have to respond or not? How do they perceive the acoustic difference between the two calls and recognize the conspecific call over the heterospecific one? So to answer this question and point out specifically the acoustic parameter responsible for the crocodile call's recognition, we performed experiments in laboratory where we artificially modified the acoustic properties of a frog call, this one, by giving it the property of a crocodile call, this one. So to do so, we decompose these two original calls into three acoustic dimensions. So first, the fundamental frequency, that is if the call is high pitch or more deep. And then the spectral envelope, that is the distribution of energy in the call. And then the aperiodic component of the calls, which are all the random elements in the call and the surrounding noise in the signal. So with these three acoustic dimensions, we then modify the frog call, creating a frog call with the spectral envelope of the crocodile calls, with sound like that. A frog call with the fundamental frequency of the crocodile call. A frog call with the aperiodic component of the crocodile call. And finally, a frog call with two acoustic dimensions at the same time of the crocodile call. So a frog call with a spectral envelope plus the aperiodic component of the crocodile call. Then a frog call with the fundamental frequency of the crocodile call. And finally, a frog call with the aperiodic component plus the fundamental frequency of the crocodile call. So now that we had our set of stimuli, we trained five dwarf caimans in our NS lab in Saint-Étienne. And to ensure that our caiman in laboratory conditions could behaviorally discriminate these two calls, the crocodile and the frog, we used the go-no-go paradigm, where the animals were taught to behaviorally respond to the crocodile call, so this is the go signal, and not to respond to the frog call, so the no-go signal. So basically, like you can see on the video, the crocodile was taught to come near the loudspeaker when a go signal, so a crocodile call, was emitted. And its response was reinforced with a food reward, which was given only if it reached the loudspeaker when a go signal was emitted. Each individual was then tested with all the signals we just saw before, that is, all the modified calls. And we reported the behavioral response of the crocodile, so if it responded to the signal and came to the loudspeaker or not. For each trial, the minimum distance to the active loudspeaker in centimeter was used to objectively assess the response of the individuals. So first, we can see that we correctly trained the caimans to respond to the crocodile call, so they came near the loudspeaker, and not to respond to the frog call, they stay away from the loudspeaker. And then, now, investigating the acoustic cues used by the caimans to recognize the crocodile call, they responded to the frog call when the spectral envelope was added, so they came near the loudspeaker, but not the frog call with either the fundamental frequency or the aperiodic component of the crocodile call. And when we added two acoustic dimensions at the same time, so they responded again when the spectral envelope was added, but not to the combination fundamental frequency plus aperiodic components. So in sum, the caimans needed only the spectral envelope information to respond to the call and therefore to recognize a crocodile call. So a complementary experiment was performed to quantify the role of the spectral envelope in the call recognition. In short, we created a morphing between the frog call and the crocodile call, with adding only the spectral envelope of the crocodile call to the frog call in a certain percentage. And here is focused on the results. And we can see that only between 35 and 40% of the spectral envelope information was necessary for the caiman to recognize the crocodile call and to respond to it. So time to conclude. The spectral envelope was thus the main acoustic dimension on which the individuals relied on to label the calls. That is, only the timbre was used by the caimans to recognize a conspecific call over an heterospecific one. So the timbre rather than the pitch, which is usually the main acoustic parameter used by animals and even humans to easily discriminate signals. And in addition, only a little amount, around 40% of the spectral envelope, seemed to be sufficient for the caimans to recognize the crocodile call. So additional experiments are now in progress to explore more in details the auditory discrimination abilities of the caimans and their implication in the context of decision making. Thank you for your attention.